I think what we're all saying is we're going to sit and watch. We're going to wait and see because we can't do anything else except.
I'm not going to wait and see. I mean, this guy is told us he's a retribution. He's going to be a dictator. There's
nothing to be done until you know what you're fighting. It's pissing in the wind doesn't help. You just get a wet face.
But I mean, what I'm saying is I have no false expectations that at 78 he's going to all of a sudden turn into another human being. And I'm not going to spend. I spent weeks telling people that he was apocalyptic. I'm not going to change now because it's still the same man.
Treating every single thing like
I think that's when we lose credibility.
Well, here's the thing: you lose credibility in many different ways. If you don't know what you're talking about and you accuse him of something, then they're going to blow it back. That's why I say we need to wait and see exactly what you're going to do.
It started behind closed doors, but the ripples hit live television. Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, had enough. According to insiders, he stepped in personally to deal with the chaos brewing on The View. His message? Clear: tone it down or you're out. And by you, he meant Whoopi Goldberg, the face of the show and the loudest voice in the room. The political jabs, especially the relentless anti-Trump commentary, had worn thin.
We're having a conversation.
Yes.
And we're going to go back to it. But before we do, I just want to say, this is the beauty of people who have different opinions. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes we're messy. And I don't know if you noticed that when I came out this morning, I had trouble trying to figure out because there was nothing in the thing. There's something in the air. So just know something is chewing on us.
You know what's in the air, Whoopi?
What's
Trumpism. We lost the election. Wait a minute. We lost the election. We're miserable. Half of this country is miserable. And let's just tell the truth. We hate that he won. We hate it. And everybody's uptight and crazy right now.
Well, then I'm going to say to that machine over there, you stop blaming me. Supposed to do. You bring up the words I need to say. So what I need to say is we're going to go back to the convo that we were having.
Not just with viewers, with advertisers too. Disney didn't just want change. It needed it. What made this moment so intense wasn't just the warnage, it was who delivered it and how. This wasn't some middle manager whispering suggestions. This was Bob Iger, the top of the food chain, drawing a line in the sand. And it wasn't just about opinions, it was about money, power, and the future of one of daytime TV's biggest shows. People inside the studio said the tone had already started shifting. Whoopi, once fierce and fiery, seemed different. Less aggressive. More cautious. Some even said she sounded like she was about to give Trump a chance. That's how deep the pressure was getting. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now let's continue.
So Trump definitely doesn't understand economics. He's listening to someone who you say doesn't understand economics. And so there is no end plan. There is no game plan. He doesn't know how to negotiate. He couldn't negotiate himself out of a paper bag. But the issue here...
But his narcissism prevents him from listening to people.
From admitting that. Yes. And to Whoopi's point at the very beginning, meaning that clip that we played, that he's saying, you know, everybody's kissing my butt. They're actually not, because China has accused the United States of blackmail and declared that Beijing would fight to the end. The Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, has said its friendship with the U.S. is over. Australia's Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, said Trump's tariffs have no basis in logic, are not the act of a friend, and he called them totally unwarranted. Macron from France, he said the tariffs are brutal and unfounded.
Who said this? We went from the envy of the world to the enemy of the world.
Yes,
Who said that?
I don't know who said that, but what I will say, from my perspective, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, no country can count on America anymore. They're going to ice us out economically. We're going to be on our own because they're not going to be able to depend on a country that every 4 years could elect a dictator. They can't rely upon us.
The problem is this. Behind the cameras, the shift wasn't just Whoopi's idea, it was survival. Her contract was up for renewal, and there were whispers that ABC might be preparing to cut ties. She was even noticeably missing from some of The View's weekend promos online, a move that didn't go unnoticed. Then came the Oscars. Whoopi appeared on stage to present, but some sources say that wasn't just about showbiz, it was part of a bigger negotiation, a strategic play. The Oscars aired on ABC. It was her way of showing she was still a valuable asset to the network, still a star worth keeping. But despite the smiles and glitz on stage, behind the scenes, things were tense. Word was spreading that Disney had issued a new directive to the View team: back off the politics, focus on pop culture. The anti-Trump attacks were starting to sound old and repetitive even to their own executives. It wasn't resonating with audiences the way it once did. And advertisers? They were losing interest fast. Whoopi, now caught between the producers, her co-hosts, and the corporate bosses, was under pressure like never before. The network wanted a shift. The audience wanted fire. And Whoopi had to somehow balance both while knowing her job might be on the line if she got it wrong. But Whoopi wasn't the only one under pressure. The rest of the panel was in full-on resistance mode. Ana Navarro didn't want to change. Sunny Hostin wasn't budging. Joy Behar? She was as fiery and unapologetic as ever. Disney's push for less politics and more entertainment wasn't sitting well with anyone, and the internal tension exploded into full view. Producers were begging for change. They wanted fun, pop culture, a lighter tone, but the co-hosts weren't having it. Instead of adapting, they started clashing on air, off air, in meetings, even during live tapings. What was supposed to be a behind-the-scenes shift turned into a public spectacle. You could literally watch the drama play out live on television. One producer was reportedly at his breaking point, asking, "What do I do with these women?" The show had become a battlefield, with talent pulling in one direction and the bosses in another. Some inside ABC even joked the easiest solution would be to fire them all and start over. It might sound extreme, but the frustration was real. Meanwhile, the audience could feel something was off. The conversations felt more chaotic. The chemistry was shaky. This wasn't just creative disagreement, it was a power struggle. Who controlled the view? The hosts? The producers? Or Bob Iger himself? One thing was clear. The usual formula was cracking and everyone was watching to see who would break first. Then came the moment that really showed how bad things had gotten. Live on air, Whoopi started snapping not at a guest, not even at a co-host, but at the people behind the camera. She looked straight at the teleprompter and called it out. "You want me to say something? Put it in the prompter!" It wasn't scripted. It wasn't a joke. It was frustration, raw and real, spilling out in front of millions of viewers. What made it even crazier? This happened right after the election. Tensions were already sky high. Half the country was upset, angry, exhausted. The View's audience had come to expect fiery takes and outrage. But now, Whoopi was being told to cool-eyed hand she clearly didn't know how to balance that with what she'd always done. She wasn't just frustrated with the producers, she was calling out the whole machine. She was saying, "You want me to change? Then tell me what to say." And the rest of the table? Silent. No one backed her. Joy Behar did her usual rant. Sunny glanced at her notes. Anna stayed quiet. It was Whoopi, alone, trying to lead a sinking ship, while the crew refused to row. This wasn't just a talk show anymore. It was alive, meltdown slow, uncomfortable, and impossible to ignore. Behind the scenes, ABC was in full damage control. And the pressure wasn't just coming from Disney anymore, it was federal. The SEC was breathing down their necks over DEI-related lawsuits, and there was serious talk that affiliate deals across the country were at risk. Money, reputation, reach it was all on the line. And The View had become a hotbed of controversy right in the middle of it. Whoopi, seen as the de facto leader of the table, was now being asked to do the impossible, get the entire cast in line. But how do you lead a group that refuses to follow? She was stuck. On one side, the network was saying, "Change the tone or we're done." On the other, her co-hosts were saying, "We're not changing a damn thing." And on live TV, it showed. One day, she outright said there was nothing in the teleprompter like. She didn't even know what they wanted her to say anymore. It was a desperate moment. She was clearly overwhelmed, confused, and angry. Her producers weren't giving direction. Her team wasn't backing her. And the result? Live television filled with awkward pauses, tension, and public breakdowns. This wasn't just about Whoopi losing patience, it was about her losing control, and Disney was watching every second, deciding whether she was still worth the paycheck or if it was time to move on. While Whoopi was struggling to hold the show together, her co-host Sunny Hostin was facing her own criticism. Viewers and insiders noticed something strange. Sunny wasn't speaking from the heart anymore. She was glued to her note cards, reading legal disclaimers and scripted lines like a robot. And when she did speak freely, it often felt hollow, like she was unsure of what she was even trying to say. The behind-the-scenes chaos had taken over the on-air dynamic. People close to the show claimed Sunny couldn't deliver unless it was written down for her. And those notes? Supposedly handed to her straight from the producers, who were now caught in the middle of a tug-of-war between corporate pressure and the stubborn cast. It was embarrassing. A lawyer by training, Sunny was supposed to be the sharp, informed voice. Instead, she came off as overly rehearsed and disconnected. While Whoopi lashed out in frustration, Sunny just looked down, flipping her cue cards, trying to keep up with whatever narrative the producers were feeding her. It wasn't just about poor delivery. It signaled something bigger: the total breakdown of trust and confidence between the talent and the production team. The View was no longer a panel of strong opinions. It was a group of hosts trying to navigate a political minefield with no clear direction and no unity whatsoever. As the show unraveled, one thing became clear: nobody was on the same page. The producers wanted less politics. The talent wanted to keep swinging. And in the middle of that mess, the audience was left watching something that felt more like a live train wreck than daytime commentary. The chaos boiled over during one segment when the panel started ranting about Trump's economic policies. Instead of facts or solid arguments, it turned into a clumsy pileup of insults, finger-pointing, and contradictions. It was painful to watch. Sunny accused Trump of having no economic plan, then instantly shifted to global politics, throwing in a list of foreign leaders criticizing the US without connecting the dots. It was like watching someone read Wikipedia headlines live on air. Meanwhile, Whoopi circled back to her earlier frustration, saying, "I need the words in the prompter again," signaling she had no idea what direction the show was even taking. And Joy Behar? She was still on her usual anti-Trump tirade, completely ignoring the new mandate from above. The disconnect was out in the open. What was supposed to be a sharp, focused panel had become a bunch of people reading from notes, interrupting each other, and fumbling through half-formed thoughts. For a show that once claimed to represent strong voices, it now looked like a sinking ship, with every crew member rowing in a different direction. And here's where it got even worse. Despite all the chaos, the core cast Sunny, Anna Navarro, Joy Behar weren't backing down. They believed their anti-Trump stance worked. In their minds, the viewers wanted this fire, this outrage, this constant political bashing. They thought the numbers were proof enough. The ratings were still holding up after all. But inside the business office, it was a whole different story. The suits were looking at advertising revenue, and it was drying up fast. Brands didn't want to be associated with constant political tension. The View wasn't bringing in the kind of commercial attention it used to. Executives were reportedly telling the host to knock it off because it was hurting the bottom line. And worse? The show was repelling the audience Disney actually wanted to attract. Yet the hosts weren't hearing any of it. They were stuck in their bubble, convinced that their approach was untouchable. Our viewers hate Trump, they'd argue. This is what they tune in for. But the network wasn't seeing audience passion. They were seeing sponsorship loss, affiliate complaints, and regulatory heat. The message from the top was clear: the formula's broken, change it, or we'll replace it. But to the hosts still stuck in their political rhythm, it sounded more like background noise. That disconnect? It was setting the stage for a much bigger collapse. And just when you thought it couldn't get any messier, the spotlight shifted to ABC News. The hits kept coming. The network was already under massive pressure. Earlier in the year, they'd laid off hundreds of employees. The message was clear: cut costs, clean house, fix the image. And guess who wasn't helping? Shows like The View that brought controversy but not cash. Add to that the FCC poking around, affiliate stations getting nervous, and Donald Trump himself taking shots at ABC reporters. He went after Terry Moran, one of their own journalists, during a sit-down interview, mocking him on national television. Trump literally told him, "I picked you because I'd never heard of you," then accused him of using a photoshopped image in a story about gang members. It was a total humiliation. Moran tried to defend the image, but Trump steamrolled him. The exchange was clumsy, awkward, and made ABC look weak. It was the kind of moment that should have made headlines for journalism, but instead, it turned into another example of how unprepared and uncoordinated ABC had become. So now, zoom out. You've got The View in shambles, ABC News getting dunked on by the former president, and executives scrambling to hold the brand together. For a company like Disney built on control, polish, and clean storytelling, this was a disaster, and it wasn't over yet. As things spiraled, the real heartbreak wasn't just the backstage drama or corporate pressure it was watching. The View completely lose what little unity it had left. You could see it in every segment. Whoopi was trying to hold the line, knowing her job was dangling by a thread. She was still trying to follow the new tone from the top, trying to be more measured, less combative. But every time she tried, someone at the table pulled the conversation back into chaos. Joy Behar, as usual, refused to censor herself. Every time Trump's name came up, she went off like it was still 2017. And Ana Navarro? She looked like she'd rather quit than talk about pop culture fluff. She rolled her eyes through entertainment stories and visibly disengaged whenever the conversation drifted away from politics. There were moments where it genuinely looked like they weren't even listening to each other, just waiting for their turn to rant. And then there was Sunny, still glued to her cue cards, still unsure whether she was speaking for herself, the producers, or someone feeding her lines in her earpiece. One segment, she tried to defend a legal point, but completely froze mid-sentence. It was uncomfortable to watch, like someone trying to play a role they no longer believed in. At this point, the audience wasn't just tuning in for opinions, they were tuning in for the train wreck. Comments online exploded with people pointing out how awkward, unbalanced, and forced the show had become. Even fans of the show were saying it needed a serious reset. And in the background, Disney was watching every painful moment. Executives weren't just worried about content anymore, they were calculating costs. Salaries, production budgets, lost ad revenue, for what? A talk show that had gone from must-watch to nearly unwatchable. This wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about a brand falling apart, live on television, while everyone involved either ignored it or made it worse. All of this, the View's chaos, the public clashes, the ratings panic, the internal resistance, it fed right into a much bigger storm brewing inside Disney. The company wasn't just dealing with a few angry hosts. It was dealing with a changing world. One where bloated TV budgets, politically charged content, and forced applause just didn't cut it anymore. Live studio audiences? They were becoming a joke. Every time Joy Behar made a joke or lashed out, the applause signs flashed. It felt fake, forced, outdated, and viewers noticed. They weren't tuning in for staged clapping. They wanted real conversations, or they were tuning out entirely. On top of it all, Disney's own streaming numbers were falling, subscriptions were down, viewership was slipping. The only bright spot? ESPN. Sports was still a cash cow. People were still willing to pay for the games, the analysis, the drama reel drama, not the kind you get from Sunny Hostin's note cards. So now, the writing was on the wall. Disney had to shift, and fast. Move away from polarizing shows like The View, cut expensive, underperforming productions, focus on what people actually wanted to watch and what still made money. And if that meant gutting long-standing shows and laying off beloved names, so be it. The era of loud political TV talk, fake clapping, and scripted outrage was cracking, and The View was right at the center of that collapse. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.